Hi, everybody. This is Jon Toker from Car Biz Insider. I have two special guests here with me today. I got Noah and Kevin from Autoscores. How are you guys doing today?
Oh, we're doing great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, John. We're doing awesome.
That's great. It's such a pleasure. We've been talking about this a couple of months back to have you guys on the show, but the business schedules that you guys have and I have, and Noah was presenting at the NADA and all that good stuff. Finally, we made up this time today. Um, why don't you guys introduce yourself to our audience? Because majority of the audience I have is from Canada, so they may not know you. But I think it's a great opportunity for you guys to introduce yourself. Why? So, Noah, why don't you go ahead first?
Yeah, so my name's Noah John, and my first exposure to the automotive industry was back in 2005 or six. I was in college at the time, and the third person that's not here, but is here in spirit, is my other partner, David, and he's a second generation car guy, and he was in college at the time too, and we were both actually interested in a lot of technology. So we actually started working on the website for his father's dealership. So that was my first exposure to it. And through him, I've always been connected to it. And I got into it full time, co-founding this company, Autoscores, with him in, what do they call it? The early 2010s. Let's just say around, 2010, 2011.
The aughts.
The aughts. Okay.
Oh, the 2010s. Right.
And we've been going strong ever since.
That's really amazing story there, and I'm gonna let Kevin to introduce himself too. Then we can talk about that connection in Spain and all that good stuff. So why don't you go ahead, Kevin? Then we're gonna start talking about your good stories there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Kevin Jones, and I'm the director of dealer success for Autoscores with Noah, and been with Autoscores now for going on a couple of years. And but Noah and I, yeah, we go back to 2007, and it was because we both, we both had this opportunity to teach English in Spain, and I had studied international business and Spanish at Ohio State, and nobody ever tells you when you major in a language that you're not going to be fluent when you get the bachelor's degree in that language, and which makes sense though, because you're not necessarily a master in anything just because you have the degree in it, and so I wanted to make sure that I could say that I could speak Spanish fluently, and there was this amazing opportunity to go teach English and help the Spanish government at the time. They were just trying to lay the foundation for their schools to be bilingual, to increase the multilingualism, because there were folks from other parts of Europe, France, that were there doing the same thing. And so we were both there on a grant. Noah and I were. They put us in a hotel room, two perfect strangers, the first night we met. And we became fast friends because we were teaching English, not at the same school, but in the same general area. And so we spent a year there together as friends. And I also met David at the time, because that was one of the reasons why Noah was initially in Spain, because he had taken an interest in the language and the culture. He knew about Spain and Madrid from being friends with David and his family, who were from Madrid and their car dealership there. And we've just been friends ever since, and just kind of a winding road. I've been in business development in the technology sphere for since I came back from Spain in 2008. And just a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to join back up with Noah, and I'm really glad that I'm on the Autoscores team now.
Well, what a story there! You guys go to Spain to teach English together. You become friends. Now you guys working together. This is really nice. You guys are lucky. Good friendship here, and become a business partnership, right? So that's amazing. Um, why don't we talk about David a little bit? So you said David's family has car. Are they in the car business there, or are they
Absolutely.
working?
So their dealership is Canal Car. It was founded in the 60s by his father, Alberto Pilo. And they've been, a stalwart in the Spanish independent automotive industry, for decades now. And when I met David, I knew his dad owned a dealership, but he and I both had the same interest, which was to get into technology. We managed to do that. I ended up getting a job at EA Sports, working as a as a gameplay engineer, so a software engineer for video games. So as a kid, that's what I wanted to do, and I got to do that. And he landed a job at Microsoft on the Excel team when they were actually transitioning Excel from a desktop application to a full-fledged cloud app that people could use on the internet.
Office 365.
Yeah, exactly. That was the precursors of that. So he swore to me as I knew him that, oh, I'm never going to, I would never go back and work. You know, he grew up in his father's dealership, right? He did all facets of it. He was on the floor with the salespeople. He was in the back doing F&I. He's seen every aspect of it. It's like, I'm not going to do that. Well, a couple of years later, he calls me, he says, don't kill me. I'm going to take over my dad's dealership. So, you know, his dad, you know, was taking a step back, and David came in. And what was so unique about his situation, and more unique now, knowing what I know now that I've been in the industry, the amount of time I've been in, is that he came in to an established business that had been around for decades, had great brand reputation, but what they lacked was exactly what he possessed, which is this knowledge of technology and this knowledge of what tools are available to you and what you can do with them to save yourself time and do things better. So when he came aboard, he did a bunch of things to improve their process internally. He got them off the Post-it notes. You know, they you know, how many times are people using Post-it notes and hand notes to communicate? And he systematized all that. And along the way, he's kind of really wanted to take a look at doing his inventory pricing better. There were a lot of feelings. I mean, he's got, at the time he had over 200 vehicles. Now they have over 400, I believe. And it was just one of those things where he said, I feel like I'm missing something. I try to price my cars a certain way, and I look at the market, but sometimes these vehicles will sell fast, sometimes they don't, and something's not adding up. And he felt like looking at customer behavior was an avenue worth exploring. So he and I teamed up. We worked on a prototype that worked specifically for his dealership, where we not only looked at VDP views, which is where everyone was looking at the time. We actually looked at what people were doing on the page itself, how they were engaging with it. And what we came to realize what we were doing is what his dad was doing in the 90s and all the way, running the business up and through the 90s, which is, what was he doing to get a read on his inventory? He'd get his sales team together in the room. He'd ask him how the car's performing, and the sales team could tell him, oh, we had a couple ups on this minivan. We had a couple ups on this Audi, and he could get a pulse that way. Now everyone's on their phones doing their work and researching, so they don't visit dealerships. So David was really onto something. He was very much, I think, ahead of his time. And to just keep it short, we did a prototype. It had legs. It had promise. We said, you know what, this could be a product and a service we can sell to other dealerships. That's where Autoscores was born, in his dealership, and we co-founded it. And I'm happy that, we had some ups and downs, and certainly COVID threw a wrench at us in terms of where we wanted to go growth-wise. But since then, I was happy to bring Kevin on in his position, and it's been absolutely a blessing. So that's kind of how things have been, and it's I can't take the smile off my face.
That's good stuff that you're sharing. So what years were you guys doing these things? 2000 and when did you guys come out with the prototype first?
Yeah, so in our case, the first thing again was working to update their website, because their website wasn't fluid. Like, you could bring it up on a phone and it wouldn't resize. So we were addressing that in 2006, 2007. And because of him, as Kevin pointed out, I had an interest in Spain and wanting to continue to learn. So when David ended up staying in the States to pursue, his master's degree at Cornell before he went to Microsoft, I was switching places with him and living in Spain. And it was when we reconnected in 2010. I was in touch with him, but when we reconnected on the business sense, that's when the Autoscores journey really started. So, I would say 12 years total working on this problem in this field, but obviously part-time initially, and then coming on full-time a few years later, and then doing it full-time ever since.
That's great. 12 years. So Kevin, in terms of the reaction, because you're kind of like I would say, dealer facing, introducing this, doing demos, like you're the guy spreading the word. What kind of reaction do you get from dealers when you first show your tool? Like, what do they say? What's the feedback?
Well, I think one of the first things Noah told me when I was trying, and that's a great question, by the way, was in some cases it can seem like you're trying to sell people a telescope when they don't necessarily know there's a moon out there. And I think actually Noah might have taken that from one of our earliest customers that we worked with. But I think, just as happens with any company, as we mature, as we really internalize and take to heart a lot more of the feedback that we're getting from our growing customer base, that puts us in a position to be able to speak a language that more readily resonates with somebody who might not have ever thought about things or looked at things from the perspective that we're looking at things. And it is a completely different perspective. I mean, I think we were trying to sum it up yesterday, and I think we said, we're just gaining more and more confidence in this fact that regardless of the tools or the technologies, the processes that you're using to manage inventory, and regardless of who you are that's doing the inventory management, whether you're the GM, the GSM, inventory manager, pre-owned manager, whatever, we feel confident that you are missing something. You're leaving something on the table if you're not looking at what the customer behavior is telling you. If you don't have that customer lens into what they actually think about your unique vehicles, your customers, what they think about your vehicles at that time in real time on your website, like we have the data and the experience and the happy customers to show that you're missing something. So I think that to sum it up, it's like we just let people know, and we say very confidently that if you're not incorporating the customer perspective on your specific vehicles in your inventory, then you're missing something. You're leaving money on the table. And that seems to resonate to the point where we can do a trial. And then, as they say, the proof is in the pudding and in the eating.
Great answer. I think any kind of retail business we're talking about, including like a boutique that you go and buy clothing and stuff, right? Or a car dealership, or when you're selling a house, right? I think the presentation of the product is the key. It's more important than the price itself. Because if you can't present your product properly, let's say, imagine this for a second. You walk into Tommy Hilfiger's, shop. You're going to buy some nice golf shirts, right? You walk right in. As soon as you walk right in, place stinks cigarettes, right? The lighting is not good. It's so dark inside. The clothes are all over the place. And then there's no prices on the items that you can see. And the worst comes to worst, you can't even find an employee. And as soon as you find an employee to help you, they're extremely rude to you. What do you think the outcome will be in that? Even though it's Tommy Hilfiger, it's a known brand and all that stuff, right? Like, it's obvious that a customer goes into a car dealership, right? And I'm talking about old school stuff now, like just a physical visits. They open the door, car smells cigarettes, right? It's dirty inside. The car is dirty. The salesperson is rude. There's no price or information about that car. It doesn't matter what market you're in. You're not going to be able to sell that vehicle or product, period. And then now we take this up to the digital world, to your website. Same thing. You go to a website that is slow, doesn't load up things. You can't even find the car you're looking for. And every single car says, contact us on the price section. And then the pictures itself are just those generic pictures of the car. And even if they post a picture on it, there's snow on the car. There's cigarette burns on the seat that you can see. How likely are you going to be able to sell that car, right? Like, what do you guys think on that perspective, the presentation of the product?
Well, I think if I think back to some of the earlier workshops and conferences that I've attended, people talked about the digital showroom. That was a very popular term at the time, like, oh, your website, your digital showroom. And I think the reality is, like it or not, that, and the numbers back it up, everyone's doing their research and shopping online, and their first impression is less likely to be when they step in your dealership, which does have an impact, because they could have a great impression online of your company, and then when they show up, they have a terrible experience like you just described, and that'll turn them off, even if they were almost convinced they were going to purchase a car from you. But what that means, and what we've discovered, and this is, like speaking to David's dad, is like, what did he dominate? He dominated print, radio, television. He dominated the hand-to-hand, the in-person stuff. And unfortunately, the reality is, the skill set you need to understand your customers is becoming less the in-person stuff, because they're doing so much of their research online. And how you present your product, whatever it is, online, very much matters, because that's going to be the touch point they have with you initially. And on the same token, if you're smart about it, you can actually glean insight from what people are already seeing and reacting to online, and turn that into preparing you better and having a better sense of how things are performing before those people open the door and visit you in person.
Yeah, and what happens is this: let's say there's layers of employees in the car dealership. So I'm the used car sales manager, right? I got lot guys, I got person takes pictures, I got this and that. There's no way I can be everywhere when that process is happening, right? Because I need to desk deals, I need to appraise cars, I need to buy cars, I need to go fight with my new car manager, all that stuff that I have to do on a daily basis. So there's no way in the world that I can monitor every single employee's reporting to me to do the job properly. But one thing I can do that is, if there's a reporting mechanism which tells me the reaction of the customer, then it's going to point out the deficiencies on my presentation and my merchandising. Then I can pay more attention to that and take a corrective action. And when I take the corrective action, I can be more profitable and I can turn my inventory faster. So my understanding with Autoscores is, when I saw the program, which was, I was really shocked and surprised that I think something like this exists. I didn't know that, because I'm like a more V-Auto guy, look at your car's price, all those things. I didn't know there was a supplementary program like that, which guides the used car manager and points out the exact car with a problem on it. So now my question to that is, how do you guys do this? Like, it's just this is like next level stuff. It points out the exact car with a problem on it on your lot. Like, how can you guys do it?
So it's something that's quite common in other business sectors. It's just, I think automotive is very unique, and their idiosyncrasies about car buying and the research people do that you do need to account for. So there's an expertise there. I was very lucky because I have a tech background, and my partner, when we founded this, is a second generation car guy that grew up in it. So that was in his DNA, and he could then translate to me in my speak what's going on. And then I learned in turn to start speaking and learning the car business that way. So I kind of learned it backwards, but from a guy who had, like I said, it was in his DNA. He didn't know any other. Everything to him in a dealership was normal, where to someone that's not born in a dealership, it might seem a little odd. So what we're doing at a very high level is we're able to track what a customer does. We're essentially, I say we just sit next to the customer when they're on their phone or on their computer, and we watch what they do. We watch what they do because we can see what they click on. We can see what they swipe on. We can see if they pause over a photo, if they decide to check out the specs, or if they decide to maybe think about, like, maybe they're hovering over the lead submission form and they maybe dabble with it, but they don't actually submit it. We're able to track all that. And then what we're able to do is monitor as cars are selling and match up the positive signals and the behaviors people are doing with sales. So in other words, what we're able to do is identify the actions and patterns of actions people regularly do when they're looking at your inventory online, and match them up with when a car's coming up to selling, because people will see the car first, react positively, and then they'll come knock on your door and try to buy it. What we're able to do is identify when people are excited and about to knock on your door and ask to buy it, so that you're kind of ahead of what's happening. And that's our philosophy, is we want to look at leading indicators. And what's a better leading indicator than the people that are going to buy your car? And it involves stuff like called machine learning. We're able to take all this stuff that people are doing, throw it at the system that essentially can identify these patterns in there. And then when it sees the same patterns happening, So if it sees people reacting now to these cars in a way that it remembers people have reacted the same way in the past when a car sells, it lets us know. And we in turn let the dealer know. So for the people that are not familiar with this type of technology, it might seem quite fun, like a little voodoo. But in reality, what we're doing is the same thing, as I said, that David's dad was doing in the 90s. He was asking his sales team, how are the people reacting? How are the ups reacting to the cars you showed them? And we're essentially doing the same thing, except we're doing it in the digital medium when people are on their phones, not actually doing the walk around with your salesperson.
Wow, that's a lot to ingest, in this. It's like it's a lot of stuff that you talk about: machine learning, the website, tracking customers, patterns, behaviors. It's a lot of stuff there. So that's really like, next level stuff we're talking about here, because here's the situation we're in right now these days. I had conversations with a couple of dealerships, and they're saying like, yeah, the used car market is hot, but we see a slowdown in the sales. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we used to carry 20 cars and sell 40. Now we have 40 cars and sell 20. Okay, the gross profits are up, but we see the e-leads are down. We see the walk-in traffic is slowed down a bit, and we see a lot less people are interested in the used cars. And I'm like, why do you think that's happening? He says, I don't know. I can't pinpoint, I can't put my finger on it. It makes no sense. So here's my question. Do you think a tool like Autoscores, right? And if you've been using it for a bit on your website, your dealership, do you think that can pinpoint an issue like that? Why there's a slowdown in your sales and e-leads? Do you think would give you some indications?
Go ahead, Kevin.
I just
Kevin?
want to kind of prime this for Noah, because of course this question is very is very timely. It kind of goes back to one of the things we always say, like if we could predict like when the market's gonna turn and how severely it's going to turn, and if it's going to be a bubble that bursts, like these sorts of things. Anybody that can tell you that or says they can tell you that, I mean, they're overstating their abilities there. But of course, we can start to look at these leading indicators in the market, and the anecdotes that you were sharing, and the things that we hear from dealers, and the things that we hear from our contemporaries out there, and the experts, and not only in the automotive retail space, but in the pre-owned space, in the clubhouse rooms on LinkedIn, what have you, and we're starting to hear some of those indicators as well. And so naturally, I asked Noah, because I want to make sure that anything that I'm putting out there, first I have to understand it at an intimate level myself first to be able to properly convey it in a way that's going to resonate with the audience. But naturally, I asked Noah, like, is this potentially like an opportunity for a company like Autoscores, because we're not looking at trailing indicators, right? We're not looking at what's been happening. We're looking at leading indicators. We're looking at these signals of what's going to happen. And so in that sense, how might a dealer or an inventory manager be able to use our tool, to maybe mitigate some of the risk that some of them might see as, incoming, which is, are we going to be over leveraged on our inventory? We're going to buy too much high because the market's been so hot, and then be stuck with it. How do we start to see these turns, not only on a vehicle by vehicle basis, but at our dealership level, and how might Autoscores help with that? And so it's a kind of a nuanced answer, but I think, Noah, that's what I wanted to prime you for, and you can kind of say how because I think that's similar to what John was asking. I think you can kind of elaborate on how you would answer that question for me.
Well, so the question is, I'm sitting at my desk, and we've experienced this all the time. We're sitting at our desk as an inventory manager, where it's a GM, GSM, pre-owned inventory manager, whoever it might be. And in our case, we're sitting at our desk and we had our vehicles on the lot. And to your point, we care about the number of units we're selling and the grosses we're selling them for. And if we're looking at the market, we're going to only be knowing what's happened historically, and it doesn't necessarily suggest what's going to happen. So I remember we'd get together, we'd do our price changes on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday to get them ready for the weekend. We try to price them competitively in the market. And then we'd take a look at how our cars are performing on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday morning. And suddenly we weren't where we were positioned, because guess what? Everyone else had changed their price too. And then we had to play catch up with that. And markets will tell you what's happened after the fact. If you look at customers' buying patterns and buying habits and what they're interested in, that's going to inform you of what's going to happen. So to your point, John, looking at customers, whether it's using a tool like Autoscores or someone else's, it's going to make you more bulletproof to market shifts, because you're looking at the people that are going to lead to the event that matters to you, which is the car sale. If you look at what's happened historically, what does Charles Schwab tell you right away? Past performance does not guarantee future success, because they know what you've seen happen doesn't necessarily mean it's going to hold. What our approach is, and what we advocate, what our philosophy is you have to factor in how the customers are reacting to your inventory, because they're going to give you a read on how that's going to perform in the future, not what's happened in the past.
And there's a really key point here that made me kind of go, aha. And it's because the customer behavior does not change. What customers did, last year when they were on say we're working with a dealership and we're on their website and it's the same website, all things the same, right? Because every website's different, every website's set up different. So we have to be installed on a dealership's website for at least 30 days to study what that behavior looks like. It's going to look different. I mean, there are going to be some things that are similar, right? So, some general things you can say, like I forget the one that no. Oh yeah. So like if customers are scrolling through the carousel of photos, right, and then all of a sudden they stop and go back, like pretty much across the board, regardless of what website we're on, that's usually going to be an indicator that customer is indicated or interested in that car. But as we've been studying this, this behavior, what we know is that this is what it looks like before a vehicle sells, and what it looked like a year ago, what the things that customers were doing on a website a year ago for that website are the same things they're doing now, right? That has not changed. And that's why it's such a good predictor of when vehicles are going to sell.
But if you think about this way, so last 8 months, I would say, a little less than 8 months, the gross profit per unit significantly came up due to the shortage of the cars. Do you think high gross profits made dealers a little bit complacent, lazy, that they used to follow some merchandising practices like putting nice pictures, the angle, the description, getting the cars ready in 72 hours, right? The lot ready. Do you think because they're making so much money and people lined up to buy these cars for last 6, 7, 8 months, do you think it made them a little bit lazy? And my question is, if you agree that it made them a little bit complacent and lazy, which is the human nature, when things become so easy, right? You don't pay attention to that. So you get away from the basics. Then as sales managers, we always used to say, let's get back to the basics, right? To fix the problems. And do you think a program like Autoscores will hold people accountable and said, hey, it took you 7 days to put a picture on that car. No wonder why you didn't sell it, right? What do you think on that aspect?
Well, I believe that I think every dealer is wearing so many hats, and especially the GMs and the GSMs. I've never met a GM or GSM that has free time. They're always, they're always putting out fires. They're always wearing tons of hats. And you use the word complacency. I'm sure in some cases it is complacency. I just think it's addressing the biggest fire in the room. And if your front end gross is high, that's not going to be the biggest fire that you're trying to put out. It's probably going to be acquisition, because units are so scarce.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that that's a valuable thing, or that's a fire that needs to be addressed that's not still burning. But I think that's what's happening in the dealership at that level. They're addressing the biggest concern. The other issue is inventory management is becoming more and more complex, because they're having to do it in so many different programs, so many different platforms, and they're being exposed so many different data points. And I hate using the word data points, but that's what they're being exposed to, that you almost need to have like a PhD in that just to make sense of all of it. We're not reducing the amount of stuff they can look at, we're increasing it. So what our approach has been, and I hope that, I think dealers are realizing this, is our approach is you need to be able to lean into trusted vendor partners and technologies that are experts in a certain specific area. Let them do the heavy lifting for you, digest what needs to be digest of everything, and then present to you a curated, easy to understand set of things that then, all right, I've done this, show me what I need to see. And part of that is accountability, to your point. But that, I think, is something that the more successful dealers are succeeding at, is understanding where they're weak in terms of knowledge and filling that gap. And it can be very scary for dealers because you're asking them to find a partner with a skill set that they have a hard time vetting. And I totally get it. But if they can find someone that they can partner with, because what I said, there's no easy answer to. It's you have to use your gut, make sure you get a good rapport going with this person, or maybe you have someone in the dealership that can help you vet. And I know dealers have that. They work with someone that they trust, that works for them in the dealer in some role. And one of their roles is, I want you to vet this vendor and see, are they someone we can work with that fills this skill set? And then that vendor or that program or that service will then do the heavy lifting, give you a curated set, both of opportunities and accountability kind of partner stuff. And it's a win-win. So I don't want to say complacent. I'm sure there are cases where they are. I think it's just out of necessity. I'm going to go for the biggest fire in the room and deal with that. And right now, inventory pricing, to your point, if grosses are high, probably went down their priority list a little bit.
Yeah. And I would say, just to add on to that, is presenting them opportunities. You hear this a lot. Actionable insight, and that was even stuff that we heard early on, because we provided a lot of analytics, and it was useful to some people. But how do we make this digestible and something we can act on, but ultimately show us the results? Like, be transparent about the numbers, and there's all these anecdotes and stuff, but that's one thing that I would also always suggest is, whoever you're working with, yes, hold them accountable, but to what? Like, what are these stated objectives? Do you want to increase your front end gross total? Do you want to increase your turn? Do you want to save time? Like, what are those things? Establish those in advance, and then the partner that you're working with, hopefully they have some mechanisms built in to be transparent about the results of having worked with them. I know it sounds crazy. You shouldn't have to say those sorts of things, but we find that for us, it ends up sometimes being a kind of a bit of a differentiator. I think maybe a breath of fresh air from some of the dealers that we work with. So.
Well, I completely agree with what you guys say. It's just one biggest factor in the dealership operations, and this applies to every department in a car dealership, is the main biggest problematic KPI is aging. Whether you go to the parts department, whether you go to your new car department or used car department, aging is always a problem. You don't want stuff to age in your dealership, and that changes based on the department you're looking at it, but dealers embrace like 60-day aging policy on used, 45 days, 30 days, as it gets as aggressive as possible. So I mean, depends on the market and dealership. While they have their own limits and stuff, which makes sense. But I think if there's a tool out there could tell me why this car is aging, and even it's in a hot market, I think it could be useful for any manager in the used car department, because doesn't matter what market you're in. If the aging becomes an issue, then it eats your gross. It just creates problems. The rotors rust. It's a lot of problems when the cars sit on your lot for too long. And I think that's what I started to see happening, because the market was hot. You just put cars out there, everything gets sold at $5,000-$6,000 profit. Now it doesn't anymore. now there's a lot of dealers loaded up the inventory because they don't have enough new cars, so they obviously need to have something. And I think hopefully things get better, but I think it's getting a little tough out there to move those metal with good profit. And as the market shifted, people paid lots of money on those cars they acquire. Now it's going to be tough. The so
Yeah, I mean you see all sorts of debate on on LinkedIn and across the various forums and in Clubhouse about what's going on and what's going to happen, and some really good resources out there. One of the things that I think is so cool coming in from outside of the industry a couple of years ago is the way that so quickly the industry has embraced this kind of leveraging kind of new communication platforms to evangelize the good news. Like, here are the things that we can do, that here are the things that we did at our dealership that helped us. It's like these kind of instant 20 groups all of a sudden that are available to people every single day or weekly for whatever function of the dealership that you want to discuss. And that's one of the things I think is pretty encouraging. And on those channels, you'll hear most people talk about when the market's going to turn, all that kind of stuff. But generally, what I've heard from some really some people definitely in the know, chief economists at some large automotive companies, is they're not thinking it's going to be this bust, this bubble bursting. It's hopefully that's not the case, and it's just more of a gradual sort of return to whatever that new normal is, and it gives dealers a reasonable chance to kind of respond and not be left holding the bag a lot with whatever their investments might be and whatever the inventory might be, parts, actual cars. So that's what we've been hearing out there, but pretty encouraging just to see the way that the community all kind of bands together.
Yeah, that's really nice. I mean, Clubhouse, LinkedIn, you get a lot of information, and it's good for everybody, right? Like what we're doing here now too. We talk about the business, and hopefully this will help somebody out there. Well, it's been great hosting you guys both. Lots of information, lots of innovation, which is great stuff. Before I wrap it up, anything else you guys want to add? Final ideas, how people can contact you, all that good stuff.
Sure. So by all means, our company Autoscores, we help inventory managers manage their inventory better and faster. And obviously, we're very focused on the customer lens, and that's a lens that's been underutilized in most dealerships. We give everyone a free trial. We're very much a prove it up front company, so you don't have to take any sort of financial risk when trying us out. You do the free trial, and we're very transparent. It should be abundantly clear if we're a fit for you guys. So if you have any interest in learning more, reach out to either one of us. My email is noah@autoscores.com. Kevin's is kjones@autoscores.com. You can obviously find our information on LinkedIn. It's super easy. I want to thank you for hosting us, John. It's been an absolute pleasure. I actually was looking forward to speaking more about our times in Europe and the good food and my time when I went to Istanbul and all that stuff. But we'll save that for a drink when I see you in person. And the only thing I'm just going to put out there is, I just want to express to whoever's listening to this, to you, to Kevin, just the immense amount of gratitude I have to this industry, and especially to the people that stuck with us during the pandemic. We definitely had some people that were scared about if they're going to keep the lights on, and they had to suspend their service. But there were some people that stuck with us even when things were really thin for them, and obviously thin for us. And I'm immensely appreciative to them as well as the whole industry. It's a big industry, but it's a very tight community, and seeing everyone at NAD again in person was such a joy. So a big thank you to anyone out there. You guys are amazing, and automotive's a really cool industry. And if you think we can help you, be sure to reach out, and we'll do our best.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you, John, as well. Been very professional. I think you do a great job with your interviews, and I know that you've done some great work as well. through your company. Continued success to all of us and to the entire industry, I'd say.
Well, thanks for the good words and the best wishes. It's amazing to talking to like-minded people. For our audience, if you guys missed the whole conversation, it's recorded. You can watch it, listen it in your favorite podcast place. And if you have any questions for me, I'll be more than happy to help you out. But again, I wish everybody the best in the car business. Hopefully, everybody will close the month really strong and make good money, because there's a lot of people working in this industry. Their families, they support, and it's a big business. And hopefully, things start to go back to normal soon, and we start to get more cars, and hopefully things will get back much better. Thank you for your time, and talk to you guys later. Take care.